She introduced me as someone she knows. Funny how the neighbors suddenly wanted to know me better. That single phrase at a charity gala became the moment I stopped pretending our marriage was salvageable. I'm a maritime insurance underwriter, 34, making around $95,000 annually assessing cargo risks, stable work that paid for everything while my wife Rachel found herself after quitting her corporate communications job 14 months ago. The charity fundraiser for the local children's hospital should have been simple: write a check, network politely, go home. Instead, it became the night I publicly ended 7 years of marriage in front of 50 donors and colleagues gathered at the Harborview Hotel ballroom. I'd been noticing warning signs for months: mysterious weekend trips to wine country she took alone, overnight stays at her sister's downtown condo happening with increasing frequency, and her treatment of our joint checking account like a personal expense fund with zero accountability. The previous weekend, when I'd asked casually where she was going as she packed an overnight bag, she'd snapped with irritation rather than explanation. Does it matter? I'll be back Sunday evening, not meeting my eyes as she zipped designer luggage I'd bought her for our 5th anniversary. I didn't push because I'd been raised to trust people, but that trust was eroding under unexplained credit card charges and her increasing emotional distance. At the gala, Rachel looked stunning in an $800 navy cocktail dress, moving through the crowd with practiced confidence from her corporate background. I wore my best charcoal suit, trying to match her social energy despite preferring smaller gatherings with actual substance. We'd arrived separately because she insisted on coming early for setup. Rachel had never volunteered for event logistics before, which should have been my first clue something was wrong. I found her near the bar talking with a tall man in an expensive suit, their body language suggesting familiarity beyond casual acquaintance, her laugh too bright and performative. When I approached, she stiffened before pasting on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "There you are," she said, tone suggesting I was late despite arriving exactly when we'd agreed. "Everyone, this is my plus one." The words hung in the air like ice crystals, sharp and unmistakable. Not my husband, not even my name, just plus one, the generic term for whoever fills a seat beside you. The man she'd been talking with, Gregory from the hospital board, extended his hand with visible confusion. "Plus one? I thought you two were married." Rachel's face flushed slightly, but she recovered with corporate polish. "Well, yes, technically, but I thought it sounded more fun, laughing in that forced way people do when pretending something awkward is amusing." I felt something cold and final settle in my chest, that moment of absolute clarity when you realize you've been deluding yourself about your relationship. This wasn't a slip of the tongue, this was intentional distancing, public diminishment, her way of signaling I wasn't important enough to acknowledge properly in front of her social circle. I'd spent 14 months funding her lifestyle while she pursued undefined passions, covering our lakefront property mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, every expense while she contributed nothing financially but somehow found money for spa weekends and designer purchases. Standing in that ballroom being introduced as my plus one, while she collected admiration and networking opportunities, something inside me shifted from wounded confusion to cold determination. I thought about the lakefront property we'd purchased using mostly my savings for the down payment, the dock renovations I'd funded entirely, all paid from my income while she contributed occasional decorating opinions. I thought about my attorney consultation from 2 weeks prior, scheduled after finding hotel receipts in her gym bag from a boutique resort, receipts showing charges for suites and couple spa packages during weekends she'd claimed to be at her sister's place. Gregory was still looking at me with uncomfortable confusion when I made my decision. "Actually, let me properly introduce myself," I said, voice carrying enough that nearby conversations paused. "I'm Rachel's husband of 7 years, the one who's been funding her lifestyle for 14 months while she finds herself through expensive wine country weekends and mysterious overnight trips." Rachel's face went from flushed to pale instantly. "What are you doing?" she hissed. I continued calmly, addressing Gregory and the small crowd forming around us. "I'm also the one putting our lakefront property on the market Monday morning and has already consulted with a divorce attorney about fair asset division based on actual contributions." The silence was profound, broken only by the string quartet across the room. Rachel's mouth opened and closed wordlessly, her social image disintegrating as 50 people processed what I just announced. "You can't be serious," she finally managed. "Dead serious," I replied. 3 real estate appraisers will evaluate the property this week. Given recent marina development nearby, we should see substantial appreciation from our purchase price, which will make divorce settlement interesting since I funded 80% of the down payment from pre-marriage savings and 100% of mortgage payments since you quit working. Other guests stood frozen between wanting to eavesdrop and wanting to flee. Rachel grabbed my arm, nails digging through my suit jacket. "We need to talk privately, not here." "But you were comfortable introducing me as your +1 publicly," I said, removing her hand. "I'm just matching your level of public disclosure about our relationship's actual state." I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving her amid the wreckage of her social image, surrounded by witnesses to her husband's divorce declaration after she'd failed to acknowledge him properly. My phone vibrated with incoming texts as I reached the lobby, probably Rachel attempting damage control. I silenced it without reading and walked out into cool evening air, feeling lighter than I had in months despite just detonating my marriage publicly. Within 72 hours, I had 3 real estate appraisals completed. The results exceeded my projections: $685,000, $695,000, and $710,000, approximately 40% appreciation from our $485,000 purchase price 4 years ago, driven by new marina development 2 miles down the shoreline. I'd paid $388,000 of the original down payment from pre-marriage savings, documented with bank statements and wire transfers. Rachel contributed $97,000 from her grandmother's inheritance, making my 80% contribution irrefutable. Rachel oscillated between denial and rage across those 72 hours. "You're overreacting to one innocent comment," she texted Tuesday morning. "I was nervous and it came out wrong. You're destroying 7 years over a social mistake." I responded by forwarding bank statements from the past 8 months, highlighting $15,000 in unexplained charges from our joint accounts. The evidence was damning: $2,400 for luxury spa weekends at wine country resorts, $1,800 for premium wine club memberships, $3,200 in boutique purchases, $1,600 for restaurants in locations she'd never mentioned, and $6,000 in miscellaneous charges for workout classes, artisan subscriptions, designer sunglasses. Each transaction documented with date, merchant, and amount, a pattern of excessive spending funded entirely by my income while she contributed nothing for 14 months. Her response came within minutes, defensive and entitled. "I deserve nice things after 6 years in corporate communications. You're obsessed with money, tracking every dollar like some controlling accountant. I needed those experiences to heal from burnout instead of existing in your boring routine." The accusation of being controlling from someone who'd spent $15,000 of my earnings without discussion would have been laughable if it weren't so infuriating. I'd never restricted her spending when she had income, but once she quit working and treated my paycheck as unlimited funds, basic financial responsibility became oppressive control in her mind. My attorney confirmed my suspicions Thursday morning. "Her voluntary unemployment strengthens your position significantly," Martin explained, reviewing my documents. "California is community property, but judges have discretion when one spouse deliberately reduces income through voluntary unemployment while increasing expenses through irresponsible spending. Combined with your documentation of 80% down payment contribution, 100% of mortgage payments during unemployment, and $40,000 in property improvements, we can argue for asset division reflecting actual contribution rather than assumed equality." He studied the bank statements carefully. The $15,000 in excessive spending establishes financial irresponsibility that will influence spousal support decisions. She'll struggle claiming she needs ongoing assistance when spending money frivolously rather than seeking employment. Rachel's threats came Friday via formal letter from her attorney, demanding 50% of property proceeds, $3,000 monthly spousal support for 5 years, half my retirement accounts, and reimbursement for emotional distress from my public humiliation at the gala. Martin actually laughed reading the demands aloud. She's posturing. These demands suggest she doesn't understand divorce law or hopes you'll panic and settle quickly. Don't worry, we have documentation she can't counter. Dragging this out only costs her legal fees while depleting marital assets she thinks she's entitled to. I authorized Martin to reject all demands and present our counteroffer. Rachel receives 28% of property proceeds based on actual contribution, 0 spousal support given voluntary unemployment and excessive spending, and her half of retirement accounts minus documented unpaid loans. The counteroffer was calculated precisely, giving her exactly what she'd contributed and nothing more. Her response came Saturday evening via text from a new number, bypassing my block. "You're really going to destroy me financially over this? I thought you loved me, thought we were partners. You're showing your true colors, they're ugly. I'll fight you on everything, and it'll cost you more than just giving me what I'm asking for." I screenshotted the message, forwarded it to Martin with the note, "Evidence of attempted financial coercion," then blocked the new number. Sunday morning I drove past our lakefront property, noting how beautiful it looked in early light, the dock I'd renovated extending into calm water, landscaping I'd funded creating curb appeal that would attract buyers immediately. Rachel's luxury SUV sat in the driveway, the $600 monthly lease I'd been covering for a vehicle she rarely drove except to boutiques and wine tastings. I felt no nostalgia, only relief that I'd soon be free. Monday afternoon, a knock on my Hampton Inn door interrupted my review of condo listings. I opened it to find Alan Richardson from 4 houses down our street, someone I barely knew beyond polite waves and occasional nods when checking mail. He was mid-40s, well-dressed in business casual, holding a leather portfolio that suggested this wasn't a social visit. "Hope I'm not intruding," he said. "I heard through the neighborhood about your property going on the market. I'd like to make an offer." I invited him in, curious how news had traveled so quickly. He sat in the room's single chair while I took the desk seat, and he got straight to business. "I'm prepared to offer $75,000 over your highest appraisal, $785,000, all cash, 21-day escrow, waiving all inspections and contingencies." I stared at him, processing an offer that exceeded anything I'd imagined. "That's extremely generous." "Why?" Alan smiled slightly. "I'm a tech entrepreneur, sold my company 18 months ago. I've been watching your neighborhood for 3 years waiting for waterfront property. Your place has the best dock access and southern exposure. Honestly, what you did at the charity gala impressed me. Standing up for yourself publicly took courage. I'd like to help accelerate your fresh start." Word had clearly spread beyond the ballroom. "My wife will need to agree," I said carefully. "She's demanding 50-50 split despite contributing almost nothing." "I heard about that too," Alan said. "Neighborhood knows she hasn't worked in over a year while you've covered everything. Look, my offer expires in 36 hours. If she refuses reasonable settlement, you'll spend months in litigation while I find another property. Her choice." After he left, I called Martin immediately. "We just got a cash offer $75,000 over appraisal with a 36-hour deadline. What's our move?" "Beautiful timing," Martin said. "Forward me the offer details. I'll present it to her attorney with a clear message: accept fair settlement now and walk away with substantial money quickly, or fight for months while legal fees consume the difference and this buyer moves on." Given her financial situation, she can't afford prolonged litigation. Tuesday morning, Martin sent Rachel's attorney our final offer with Alan's purchase agreement attached. She receives 28% of the $785,000 sale price, approximately $220,000 after mortgage payoff and closing costs, based on her actual down payment contribution and 0 financial participation for 14 months. She gets her half of retirement accounts accumulated during marriage. She receives 0 spousal support given voluntary unemployment and documented excessive spending. She keeps her personal property and vehicle lease responsibility transfers to her name immediately. The alternative was months of expensive litigation, losing Alan's offer, and potentially receiving less after legal fees consumed marital assets. Martin's letter was professionally ruthless, laying out exactly how her demands had no legal foundation and how refusing this settlement would cost her significantly more than accepting it. Rachel's attorney called Martin within 3 hours. Wednesday afternoon, we met at the title company for her signature on the purchase agreement and settlement terms. She arrived looking disheveled, dark circles under her eyes, designer clothes wrinkled, a stark contrast to her polished gala appearance 5 days earlier. Alan was already there, professional and courteous, reviewing documents with his attorney. Rachel wouldn't meet my eyes as her attorney walked her through the paperwork, explaining in careful legal language that she was accepting 28% of proceeds, no spousal support, and immediate separation of all financial ties. "This isn't fair," she said quietly, pen hovering over signature lines. "You're taking everything." Her attorney responded before I could. "Mrs. Richardson, we've reviewed the documentation extensively. Your husband's records show he funded 80% of the down payment from premarital savings, 100% of mortgage payments during your voluntary unemployment, and $40,000 in property improvements. Additionally, you spent $15,000 from joint accounts without contribution or discussion. This settlement is actually favorable given those factors. Litigation would likely result in less." She signed, tears streaming down her face, each signature feeling like vindication for 14 months of financial manipulation and the public humiliation of being introduced as her plus one. The sale closed 3 weeks later on a foggy Tuesday morning. I walked away with $340,000 after mortgage payoff and splits, money that immediately went toward purchasing a modern 2-bedroom condo overlooking the harbor with ocean views and 0 shared memories. Alan completed his purchase and started renovations within days. 2 weeks after closing, I was packing the last boxes from our former home office when I noticed Rachel's desk drawer was locked. I'd never seen it locked before, hadn't even known it had a lock. Using a letter opener, I popped it open easily and found a manila folder tucked in the back containing hotel receipts that made my stomach drop. The Vineyard Estate Resort, a boutique property 2 hours north in wine country. Same location, same suite number, 8 different weekends spanning 6 months. Each receipt showed charges to our joint credit card, $450 per night for the suite, $200 to $300 for dinner, $150 for couple spa treatments, $80 for wine tastings. The dates corresponded perfectly with weekends she'd told me she was visiting her college roommate in Sacramento or staying at her sister's downtown condo. I'd been funding her affair with our money while she'd lied directly to my face about where she was going and who she was with. I pulled out my laptop and logged into our cloud photo backup, searching dates that matched the hotel receipts. Found a folder labeled Private I'd never noticed before, hidden in nested directories. Inside were dozens of deleted photos she'd thought were gone, Rachel at wineries with a man I didn't recognize, intimate candlelit dinners, couples spa robes, his arm around her waist, her laughing with genuine happiness I hadn't seen directed at me in over a year. The man was tall, dark-haired, well-dressed, probably late 30s. In several photos they wore matching hiking gear, standing at scenic overlooks with the easy comfort of people who'd spent significant time together. My hands shook as I scrolled through evidence of a parallel relationship she'd been conducting while I'd worked 50-hour weeks to fund both our lives. I searched deeper into her computer files and found archived text messages she'd backed up, probably accidentally synced before deleting from her phone. Conversations with someone saved as J, discussing their future together, and complaints about me. One exchange from 5 weeks before the gala stood out. He's so focused on work he doesn't even notice I'm gone anymore. I spent last weekend with you and he just asked if I had fun at my sister's. J, then why stay? You've told me for months you're unhappy. Waiting for the right moment. Need to secure my finances first. He pays for everything and I don't have savings built up yet. Once I figure out the house situation, I can leave cleanly. The calculation in those words hit harder than the affair itself. She hadn't been conflicted or confused, she'd been strategic, using me as her financial safety net while building an exit plan with her affair partner. The +1 introduction at the gala suddenly made perfect sense. She'd been testing public distancing, seeing if she could diminish our relationship openly as a first step toward whatever future she'd imagined with Jay. I photographed every receipt, screenshot every photo, saved every text message exchange to a secure drive, then called Martin immediately. "You need to see this," I said. Hotel receipts for 8 affairs weekends, photos, text messages planning her exit strategy. She was cheating for at least 6 months while spending our money to do it. Martin's response was immediate and satisfied. "Bring everything to my office tomorrow morning. This changes our entire position. We can file an amended petition citing adultery and financial misconduct. California is no fault for divorce, but marital misconduct absolutely influences asset division and spousal support. She'll have no leverage left." That evening, I organized the evidence methodically. Receipts totaling $8,400 for hotel stays, restaurant bills averaging $300 each, wine purchases, spa treatments, all charged to accounts I'd funded while she told me she was visiting friends and family. The text messages discussing exit strategy and financial timing. The photos showing intimacy and happiness with someone else while treating me like an inconvenience. The pattern was undeniable, documented, and damning. I confronted Rachel 2 days later at a coffee shop she'd suggested for civil discussion about finalizing details. She arrived wearing yoga clothes and oversized sunglasses, looking nervous as she sat across from me in the corner booth. I slid a manila folder across the table without greeting. "What's this?" she asked, not opening it. 8 hotel receipts from the Vineyard Estate Resort totaling $8,400 charged to our joint account. Photos of you with someone named Jay at wineries, restaurants, and scenic overlooks. Text messages discussing your exit strategy and waiting for the right financial moment to leave me. Her face went pale. She opened the folder with shaking hands, flipping through printed receipts and photocopies. "Where did you find these?" "Your locked desk drawer and cloud backup. You should be more careful about automatic syncing." She closed the folder, tears forming. "This isn't what it looks like." "Really? Because it looks like you conducted a 6-month affair using money I earned while lying about visiting friends and family, then strategically planned your exit once you'd secured favorable financial positioning." "It was just emotional support," she tried. "Jay was going through a divorce and needed someone to talk to. Nothing physical happened." I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the photos, them kissing at sunset overlooking a vineyard. "Nothing physical?" Her composure cracked. "Fine. Yes, we were involved. But you drove me to it. You were always working, never made me feel special, treated our marriage like a financial transaction." "I worked standard hours and came home every night for dinner," I said calmly. "I suggested date nights you rejected, claiming exhaustion. Meanwhile, you had plenty of energy for weekend getaways with Jay funded by my paycheck." "You don't understand what it's like feeling trapped in a boring routine," she said, voice rising. "Jay made me feel alive again, made me feel valued. By spending my money at luxury resorts while planning your exit strategy?" I leaned forward. "Your text messages are explicit, Rachel. Need to secure my finances first. You weren't confused or unhappy, you were calculating. Using me as your financial safety net while building a future with someone else." She started crying, mascara running. "I made mistakes. I was scared and stupid and I didn't know how to talk to you about my feelings." "You found time to talk to Jay about them extensively," I said. 8 weekends across 6 months. Detailed discussions about leaving me once the financial timing was right. That's not confusion, that's premeditated deception." "What do you want from me?" she asked desperately. "Acknowledgement that you weren't some victim of my emotional unavailability. You made deliberate choices to cheat, lie, and financially manipulate me while planning your exit. My attorney now has comprehensive documentation, receipts, photos, messages. This evidence creates an ironclad case for fault-based asset division." "You already got the settlement you wanted," she said bitterly. "Why does this matter now?" "Because you've been telling people I was controlling and financially abusive," I replied. "Alan told me you spread those rumors before the truth came out. This documentation proves exactly who was actually being abused in our marriage." She sat in silence, understanding she had no defense. What happens now? Divorce papers are filed next week. You have 30 days to respond. Given this evidence, I expect you'll accept the settlement without contest. If not, everything becomes public record during proceedings. She nodded slowly, defeated. For what it's worth, Jay ended things after you announced the divorce at the gala. Said he didn't sign up for complicated drama. So you lost your husband, your affair partner, and your financial security simultaneously, I said. That's what happens when you treat people like resources instead of human beings. I stood to leave. She grabbed my wrist weakly. I really did love you once. Maybe, I said, pulling away. But you loved what I provided more. There's a difference. I walked out of the coffee shop feeling nothing but cold satisfaction that truth was finally documented and undeniable. The divorce finalized 6 weeks later with Rachel filing no contest after her attorney reviewed the affair evidence. She received exactly what the settlement specified, 28% of sale proceeds, her retirement portion, and 0 spousal support. I never heard her voice again after the coffee shop confrontation. Alan's renovations on the lakefront property were completed within 3 months, and he invited me over one Saturday to see the transformation. The dock I'd built now had a boat lift and custom lighting. The landscaping I'd funded was enhanced with native plants and stone pathways. The interior was completely remodeled with an open concept and floor-to-ceiling windows maximizing water views. This place is incredible, I said, genuinely impressed. You saw the potential, Alan replied, handing me a beer as we stood on the new deck. Most of the value was already here from your improvements. I just refined it. That dock alone probably added $40,000 to the property value. We'd become genuine friends over the preceding weeks, occasionally meeting for coffee or drinks. Alan had gone through his own messy divorce years earlier and understood the strange relief that comes from escaping a relationship built on deception. How's the new place treating you? He asked. Perfect, I said honestly. My Harborview condo was everything the lakefront house wasn't: modern, manageable, completely mine with no shared history or bitter memories. Smaller space, better life. Heard from Rachel at all? She's tried contacting me 7 times through different numbers and social media accounts, I said. Each message escalating from vague apologies to desperate pleas. I don't respond. Alan nodded approvingly. Smart. Women like that only come back when they realize what they lost, not because they've actually changed. Through mutual acquaintances, I'd learned Rachel's situation had deteriorated significantly. Her affair partner Jay had indeed ended things immediately after the gala drama, apparently unwilling to be associated with her public scandal. She was living in a studio apartment across town, working retail at a department store after her luxury real estate marketing contacts dried up when word spread about the affair and financial manipulation. The $220,000 she'd received from the property sale was disappearing quickly, probably funding the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to on my dime without understanding it wasn't sustainable on retail wages. One evening 3 months post-divorce, I was leaving my condo building when I spotted Rachel standing across the street near the visitor parking. She looked thinner, tired, wearing clothes I recognized from 2 years ago rather than her usual designer pieces. When she saw me notice her, she started walking toward me quickly. I pulled out my phone and called building security without hesitation. There's someone I need removed from the property, I said clearly, maintaining eye contact with Rachel as she froze mid-approach. I have a no-contact preference and she's violated it. Security arrived within 2 minutes. The building had excellent response protocols. Rachel tried explaining she just wanted to talk for 5 minutes, but the guard was professional and firm, escorting her to her car while I watched from the lobby. She looked back once with desperate, pleading eyes. I felt nothing. That moment crystallized something I'd been processing for months. The woman I'd married no longer existed, if she ever had. The person standing in that parking lot was a stranger who'd worn a convincing mask for years before the real priorities, money, status, excitement, revealed themselves. I went back upstairs, poured a glass of wine, and stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows watching boats navigate the harbor with their running lights creating paths through dark water. My life had become exactly what I'd needed: freedom from deception, control over my own finances, and the profound peace that comes from choosing self-respect over false reconciliation. The salary increase from my recent promotion to senior maritime underwriter meant I was saving more monthly than I'd ever managed while funding Rachel's lifestyle, building actual wealth instead of subsidizing someone else's fantasy. 4 months post-divorce, my life had settled into a rhythm I genuinely enjoyed. The promotion to senior maritime underwriter came with a 25% salary increase and mentorship responsibilities I found surprisingly fulfilling. Teaching junior analysts how to assess cargo risks and evaluate marine insurance claims gave me purpose beyond just processing paperwork. I was building something meaningful in my career while my personal life finally stabilized. Alan and I had developed a real friendship, occasionally fishing together on weekends from his renovated dock or meeting for dinner at waterfront restaurants. He'd become the kind of friend who understood what I'd been through without needing constant explanation, someone who'd survived his own marital disaster and come out stronger. One Saturday evening, we were at a harborside seafood place when he mentioned Rachel had attempted contacting him, asking if he'd talk sense into me about giving her another chance. "What did you tell her?" I asked, amused rather than bothered. "That you'd moved on completely and she should do the same," Alan said. "She tried the whole 'I made mistakes but we had something real' speech. I told her real relationships don't involve spending your husband's money on affair weekends while planning financial exit strategies." I learned through former mutual friends that Rachel's life had continued its downward trajectory. The $220,000 from the property sale was nearly gone after 8 months, burned through on rent deposits, car repairs after her leased SUV was repossessed, and attempts to maintain her old lifestyle on retail wages that couldn't sustain it. She'd tried rekindling things with Jay, her affair partner, only to discover he was still married and had never actually intended to leave his wife. The future together, they discussed in those text messages, had been fantasy on her part and manipulation on his. She was living in a studio apartment, working at a department store cosmetics counter, posting occasional Instagram stories with vague inspirational quotes about growth through adversity and learning your worth. The contrast between her current reality and the luxury lifestyle she demanded was stark. Karma delivered with mathematical precision. My phone buzzed one evening in late autumn. Another unknown number, another message from Rachel using a friend's phone or new account to bypass my blocks. "I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need you to understand something. Jay used me. He knew I was vulnerable and unhappy, and he said all the right things about our future together. After you filed for divorce, he admitted he was never leaving his wife. I was just entertainment. I threw away everything real for a lie, and I live with that every day. You deserved better than how I treated you. I'm sorry." I read it twice, considering whether to respond. Finally typed, "I appreciate the apology, but it doesn't change anything. You made calculated decisions over 6 months, not one mistake. I hope you find whatever you're looking for, but it won't be with me." I blocked the number and deleted the conversation. 2 weeks later, I ran into someone from the charity gala at a coffee shop, Gregory, the hospital board member who'd witnessed my public divorce announcement. "I've been meaning to reach out," he said. "What you did that night took courage. Everyone was talking about it for weeks afterward. Your ex tried doing damage control, claiming you were controlling and unstable, but too many people knew the truth about her spending and the affair." "Appreciate you saying that," I said. "It wasn't planned, just reached my breaking point at exactly the right moment." "Wrong moment for her," Gregory smiled. "Right moment for you. You look like a different person, lighter, if that makes sense." It made perfect sense. I'd shed literal weight from stress relief and was sleeping better than I had in 2 years. My condo was exactly what I needed, my career was thriving, my friendships were genuine rather than obligatory social performances. Rachel's final attempt at contact came via handwritten letter delivered to my office. She must have found the address through old documents. My assistant brought it to my desk with raised eyebrows, recognizing the handwriting from when Rachel used to drop off lunch during our early marriage years. I didn't open it immediately, just set it aside and finished reviewing a complex hull insurance claim that required my full attention. That evening, I finally read it at home with a glass of wine. 3 pages of handwritten confession and pleading, admitting the affair was longer than 6 months, acknowledging she'd used me financially, claiming she'd been in therapy learning about her patterns, begging for one conversation to explain everything she'd realized about herself and us. The letter ended, "You were everything I actually needed, but I was too broken and selfish to see it until I'd destroyed what we built. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know the truth. Losing you was the biggest mistake of my life." I read it once, felt nothing, and fed it through my office shredder the next morning. The truth was simpler than her therapy revelations. Some people don't value what they have until it's gone, and by then it's too late. 6 months post-divorce, I'd stopped counting days and stopped wondering if she'd reach out again. My life had become exactly what I'd built it to be. Mine, uncomplicated by deception or financial manipulation, filled with work I found meaningful and friendships built on mutual respect rather than transactional convenience. Standing on my condo balcony watching sunset paint the harbor gold and orange, I realized the greatest victory wasn't revenge or vindication, it was peace, and mine was finally complete.